About 150 years ago, Mark Twain quipped, "Suppose you were an idiot, and suppose you were a member of Congress," but I repeat myself. My, how times don't change, huh? The current rating of Congress, approval rating, is 8 to 13%, depending on which poll, an average of about 11 or 12%. And I know as a college professor, I would have never kept my job if only that little percent of my students approved of the way I was doing my job. And the country is in a real mess. And I think it's in a real mess because people go to Congress and they vote a rigid ideology, but they don't consider the implications of their vote. For instance, as a child of poverty in Wichita, Kansas, my brother and I survived on government commodities, which was a precursor to the food stamp or SNAP program. And without that assistance, without the government commodities, we would have frankly starved and perished from this earth. And so when Congress willy-nilly votes to cut the nutrition assistance program, much of which goes to children, by $39 billion, I have a visceral reaction to that. Because I know there are little Tommies and little Roberts, my brother's name, all around this country that if they're successful, then they're going to go hungry tonight. So I think the fact that I grew up in poverty, lived in the Tulsa Boys Home and foster homes, was adopted by a great family, and struggled my way and educated myself and made my American dream come true. I think the problem with a lot of these people in Congress is they're selfish. They've gotten their American dream maybe, and they don't seem to care about the rest of us. And I think I have the empathy to care about everyone. This Congress is so ineffective and the worst Congress and the least productive in history. In fact, if we had a slogan for this Congress, it might be, "If it ain't broke, we can break it." And they've broken all kinds of policies, energy included. I think that even though we need to continue to support fossil fuels, we need to move to cleaner burning fuel, for instance, natural gas abundant in Oklahoma. We need to seek alternative fuel sources such as solar and wind power. And I couldn't disagree more with what the state legislature did in charging a premium for people that produce their electricity that way in this last session. So we're all in this together. We only have so much clean air and clean drinking water. We need to protect them. At the same time, we need to let our energy businesses go out there, find and be creative and make energy, and also be able to make a profit. Certainly. We need infrastructure repairs, rebuild our highways, roads, bridges, runways, schools, sewer systems, water systems. That would make a tremendous difference. That will have to be financed from Washington because the states are broke. The other thing is what is happening in the lack of support for public education around the country is shameful. Here in Oklahoma, we're not adequately funding public education. At the national level, the recent budgets have cut Pell Grants, which allow low and moderate income students to afford the cost of college. And the rates for student loans, Stafford student loans, are too high. Just yesterday, the Senate had a chance to let college students who have debt that where the interest rate's as high as 7% to refinance that, and it was voted down under the Byzantine rules of the U.S. Senate. So there's so many things we can do, and everybody knows someone cannot live on $7.25 an hour. We need to raise the minimum wage, and we need to do it the day before yesterday. Well, Harvey mentioned that there are politics in churches. As someone with 30 years experience in higher ed, there also are politics in higher education. In fact, when Woodrow Wilson, who was president of Princeton, was elected president of the United States, he went to Washington, D.C., and a Cubby reporter got an exclusive interview with the new president. And the first question he asked is, "President Wilson, how do the politics compare here in Washington, D.C. with the politics at Princeton?" And after thinking for a second, the President Wilson said, "It's nice to be here with the amateurs for a while." So I've lived through that. If you can live through higher ed politics, you could probably live through even church politics and just about any kind of politics. But I don't want it to be lost on you that of the candidates here today, there's only one Democrat. But there are two other Democrats running, so they chose not to come to this event today. And I think that's one thing that I would do differently. I've known people of all cultures, spoke all kinds of languages, all kinds of customs, all kinds of personalities, all kinds of political philosophies. And I was able to get along with all of them, about 17,500 students in my time teaching at UCO and Oklahoma City University. And one of the things that the House of Representatives is doing very wrong is they're not spending enough time in session. I think the voters in Virginia yesterday gave a resounding thumbs down to the way that business is being done in the U.S. House of Representatives, kicking out for the first time in history the sitting majority leader in the U.S. House. So I think we need to reason together, we need to sit down, we need to get away from our ideological polar opposition, we need to have common sense. Shane Jett, I know, I really like Shane. Patrice Douglas and I see each other at the post office. When I saw her today, we hugged. Harvey Sparks is warming up. We can do this together. My name is Tom Guild. I would appreciate your vote in the Democratic primary. And on the off chance that there's anyone in here not registered Democrat, I would appreciate your vote in the general election should I be lucky and fortunate enough to be the Democratic nominee. We have the mayor of Edmond here, and His Honor Mayor Lamb probably has heard some advice from people when he was running for office as he serves in office. Some good, some bad, some indifferent. And I try to take any kind of constructive ideas that people offer me. On the other hand, some people offer some ideas like you ought to raise money or you ought to get on TV or stuff like that, which isn't all that practical. I kind of thought of those things already. But people want to change who I am, and I think I'll just be myself because everyone else is taken. I just think I'll be myself. And who I am is an ex-college professor, professor emeritus, 30 years. But I'm still that little boy Tommy that lived in deprivation and nearly starved to death and didn't have adequate clothes to wear to school and was helped by a few adults at the school. And I set up a foundation at Payne Elementary School to help other students in that same neighborhood in Wichita. So when we talk about cutting nutrition programs, not so fast. Let's think about how that impacts people. When we talk about cutting Social Security benefits, not so fast. That program in existence since 1935 has taken hundreds of millions by now of American seniors out of poverty. Cut Medicare, not so fast. Privatize any of the above, not so fast, because Medicare, when it was put into effect, there were 30% of our seniors living in poverty. Now that's 7.5%. We need to loan to college students at the same low rate that big banks get. My adoptive mother taught me one thing: what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and that's the fair thing to do. Anyway, I've looked at life from both sides now, from up and down, from here and there. And I tell you what, if you want someone that has a broad perspective and not a narrow ideology, understands impact decisions have on people, vote for Tom Guild.